Cigarettes made out of Pebbles. A DXM trip report by Pretzel Pete. Posted at irwood.org November 22nd, 2023. 240 millilitres of DXM dry cough forte, equal to 11.8 milligrams per kilogram. I dosed at 7:30 PM, knowing it would be dark in an hour or so, as the peak would be in darkness. I chose to trip at home, and as usual with no lighting, and would be navigating around the house by feeling the walls once things kicked in. So, I did 240 millilitres of dry cough forte in a set of 12 20ml shots, back to back, and was ready to roll. I would then spend the come-up period preparing the main trip room for complete blackout. It's a square room, with my computer in it on a standing desk, speakers, a shag rug in the centre, and a pillow. So as I was coming up, I was draping towels over the computer lights and keyboard, etc., and had a Robitussin brand blanket which is a black and white zigzag pattern. This was 30 minutes in, and the pattern was beginning to vibrate as I put it over the monitor. I had the music all set up, which was a bunch of Mr. Black mixes from SoundCloud, and I was kind of feeling it. The nausea begins to kick in my stomach a bit. A slight increase in body temperature occurs, so I change into lighter clothing. I was dancing to the tunes as the rush was kicking, and made a last-minute change as I wasn't quite vibing with the mixes. So I loaded up 8 different Kakariko mixes, and as the first one began, the transition from coming up to what I would describe as peak effects began. I had to lay down on my back with the pillow and the dissociation beginning, as a dark grin covers my face. The distance of the music source began to push further and further away, while simultaneously becoming more encompassing. The bass is especially pronounced, and lying on the floor makes every vibration felt. My arms were by my side with palms facing up, and their location and sensation too began to push and stretch further and further away to which felt like kilometres, while the sensation of the rest of my body remained stationary. I close my eyes, and a beautiful vision of a dark underwater scene is present with these floral-like clusters of corals, which resemble mushrooms of their overall shape, jellyfish-like. They were lilac and white, with a dim shimmering luminescence, and were utterly gorgeous, and began to ascend to the surface of the water. This vision then subsided, and I once again opened my eyes. The incredible sensations of profundity hit me to a degree where I was on the verge of an orgasm. This was a sustained sensation and very enjoyable. This was where it felt as if I was contacted by spiritual beings, and beings representing Mother Nature, and I began to see the interconnectedness of the collective unconscious. I was being guided by these spiritual beings, and was seeing people in their spiritual form, which sort of resembled red tadpoles, and were multiplying and disappearing in a display of life and death, all connecting like neural connections in the brain. I got a grander sense and realization that the differences in race and culture doesn't matter, and that we are all connected as one spiritually, in a way that is not visible, the way objects and events are connected in the real world. Overall, this was a profound experience. It was like I was being accepted with open arms into the spiritual world, and I cried slightly with happiness. Then, the image of a previous workplace I worked at came up, and I worked with very toxic and a truly narcissistic bunch of people that caused a lot of damage to myself. The spiritual being wanted me to live out the painful memories again, in order to heal. And so I did, with a heightened sense of anguish. And as the scene finished, it then felt almost like I was surrounded with white light, and saw myself levitate upwards from the third person, and the past damaged seemed healed in an instant. This was an hour in, as the first Kakariko mix had finished, and I was still in the peak of the trip. I decided to have a cigarette. I'd given up for 2 years, and unfortunately started again recently, and I was also planning to use this trip to quit. I had 2 ciggies left, set aside for the trip, which were on the kitchen counter. I crawled like a toddler through the long hallway leading to the kitchen and navigated to the cigarette on the counter. There's a skylight in the kitchen, so it was not completely dark like the rest of the house, As moonlight was casting a subtle blue light through the kitchen, I lay on my back and, again, the thought occurred to me that I would be dancing with the dragon that is nicotine. I light up the cigarette and inhale, and instantly my brain lights up. And as I look at the ceiling, instantaneously a wash of black and white square-based detailed geometry covers the entire ceiling. I exhale, and the geometry disappears. I inhale again, and a new set of reddish geometry engulfs the ceiling, and the presence of a dragon-like being floating through the air is felt, and the feeling of the spiritual being saying, "You are dancing with the dragons. I hope you enjoy it. This consumption will only be for ritualized purposes now." I finish the cigarette and navigate back to the main trip room. I sit kneeling, upright on the rug with my eyes open. I fell into what I would definitely call a hole or a void. The space of the void was cubic in size, with spherical edges and completely black, with slight areas of illuminated light to present form. I look down and see dully lit, however, illuminate geometry, which is dark green, indented with clean holes into a larger, geometrical torus-like shape, but had a slight resemblance of trypophobia, minus the revulsion. I then start to lose orientation of my body. I am looking down at my body from the third person, severely dissociated at this point, and I am wearing this shiny black suit with neon white spotted patterns that then extend downwards to infinity. The scene pans up, and now my body is upside down on the roof, and I say to myself, but wait, what's actually going on? I'm now up here. Simultaneously, the direction of gravity rotates to a 45-degree angle, then 180 to align with my body on the roof, and also at the same time, the source of the music is moving to different spaces on the cubic room, being heard on the left wall, then roof, then right. I lose all sensation and presence and sight of my body completely, except for my hands, which are grabbing onto the rug, kind of like a cat scratching on carpet. I can only feel my hands, no idea where I am, which way is up, where the music is coming from, and what orientation gravity is. It was utterly confusing and disorientating. The void, all of a sudden, centers itself back into black, and I am reorientated correctly. And a silver swath of a trim sheet. In video games, a trim sheet is basically a sheet with different textures and panels, details, beveled edges used for texturing, starts to move towards me out of the blackness, almost in an ominous fashion, then receding back again. I see a small cluster of green video game assets that I had made, sitting motionless in the corner. Neon lights appear and disappear, and the general headspace of the void is very arcade and video game-like, as the gravity changes, sort of felt like Pong. This part lasted about an hour, and I decided to finish the last cigarette. I start to navigate down the hallway to the kitchen, eyes still open, walking this time and running my hands along the wall for guidance. All the while, the hallway turns into an Art Deco city scene, like the hallway floor was a road, and the walls were the buildings. I make it to the kitchen and approach the counter where the last cigarette is. The kitchen counter is made out of some sort of decorative stone similar to marble. As I go to grab the cigarette, the whole kitchen counter, its cupboard doors, the wall behind it, and the cigarette itself, gets covered in tiny white pebbles the size of sesame seeds. It was full on. And I then look down towards my hands and arms, noticing them get covered in these sesame-sized pebbles. I look around the kitchen, and instantaneously, an overlay of cobblestone, which was highly disorganized and damaged, covers the whole floor and counter in a sporadic-like way. I immediately sit down on the floor, as this was getting pretty damn full on for me, and look at my hands and arms again. The sensation was exactly like looking down at my hands while playing a game in virtual reality. The smaller sesame seed pebbles appear and disappear, and then the veins and muscles on my arms start to morph and breathe in and out, like it was expanding and contracting. I look away, All the while, the kitchen is still being covered in this disorganised cobblestone, which now started to look like blood spatters, but like from a retro FPS. It engulfs more space across the kitchen. I look back down at my hands, and now realistic wounds start appearing on my fingers and palms and then disappear. Then, splits and incisions in my fingers morph in and out and breathe. The same thing occurs on my other hand at the same time. I was looking down at the wounds on my hands appearing and was kind of like, whoa, that's kind of freaky, but I guess it's kind of cool as well. I lie on my back again. The pebbles had disappeared from the cigarette, but now it felt really thick in my hand, like I was holding a flare. I wasn't too sure which way it was, so I flicked the lighter, which has the feeling of immediately sucking me out of the Dextro universe, but giving the whole room this unusual pale yellow hue. I turn the ciggy the correct way, light it, and lie on my back. A repeat of events from the first cigarette occurs as I smoke this one. On my return to the trip room, I passed the toilet and bathroom, and they appeared quite royal with Art Deco stylings. The toilet walls in particular were made up of these lush green jade tiles. As I looked into the bathroom, it felt as if my neck stretched right up, and I was surveying the newly stylized bathroom from an aerial view. It then felt like my neck receded back to its correct length. I enter the trip room and lie on my side, and start to see a metal strip of decorative architecture, again in an Art Deco style, which starts to run repetitiously, as if looking top down at a conveyor belt in motion. The sensation of my body then starts to expand and expand, to the point where it felt like I was the size of a planet. However, my arms did not expand and come along for the ride, and actually remained their standard size. Things did get a bit choppy after here. There was a moment where I left the trip room and lost complete orientation as the hallway was being blocked by newly formed architecture, and the gravity orientation was messing with me at times too. My cat, which is black and white, appeared at one point and was instead all silver. I patted my newly silverized cat confusingly. Things appeared to subside in intensity, so I decided to get myself to bed, and this was around 2 AM. Here is where I really began to reflect on the trip. I got up at one point and realised I'm still very much tripping, and decided to play around with some glow sticks, dancing away in the main trip room, but ultimately was exhausted by it all after an hour. So then I go back to bed around 3 AM, feeling drained, mentally depleted, and ended up falling asleep around 9 AM. It was somewhat grueling by that time. I'm always impressed by how gentle DXM transitions me back downwards. In comparison, I've had MDMA that have dropped me from a total euphoria to complete crap in an instant, like getting kicked out of a moving car. Overall, this was the farthest out there I'd been on DXM. A highly enjoyable, profound, sometimes painful, and at times utterly confusing trip with the video game motifs throughout the day playing a major role in the feeling of the trip. However, I'm glad I went through this experience. This is the first time in quite a while that I've shared dextromethorphan by itself. Usually, I share it in trip reports in combination with other substances, so I thought it'd be worth sharing the Psychonaut wiki entry on DXM here. Dextromethorphan, also known as Robo, Dex, DM, and DXM, is a dissociative substance of the morphine class. It is the primary active ingredient in many common over-the-counter cold and cough medicines. When exceeding approved doses, DXM produces dissociative effects similar to those of ketamine and phencyclidine, PCP. It acts as a non-competitive NMDA receptor antagonist. DXM was first reported in 1953 and approved for use as a cough suppressant in the United States in 1958. After its approval, it was introduced as an OTC medication under the name Romalar. As early as 1975, the popularity and extensive abuse of DXM was recognised, and Romalar was voluntarily removed from the OTC market. A few years later, companies began introducing various refined DXM products designed to deter abuse, such as including ingredients with an unpleasant taste. However, Recreational use of DXM has persisted and is considered a growing trend, particularly among teenagers seeking low-cost and easily available highs. Subjective effects include dissociation, time distortion, bodily hallucinations, immersion enhancement, motor control loss, euphoria, and ego loss. Users commonly describe low doses as producing an alcohol-like intoxication, while higher doses produce effects similar to ketamine or PCP. It is often reported to produce a strong, uncomfortable body load with significant nausea. The effects and tolerability of DXM are highly variable between users, which may be due to individual differences in the genes underlying metabolism. As a result, many users find the experience of DXM to be either unpleasant, neutral, or dull, while others report mystical-like psychedelic experiences. It should be noted that DXM in freebase form, as found in RoboCough Robo tablets, is around 27 to 37% more potent than its hydrobamide form due to a higher concentration of DXM by weight. One should take this into account when calculating their dose to avoid a potential overdose. The toxicity of DXM in recreational doses is unclear and has been the subject of controversy. There is some evidence that suggests that NMDA antagonists may have neurotoxic effects when used in excess. Many cases of DXM dependence and abuse have been documented, and it is strongly advised to use harm reduction practices if using this substance. While having not done DXM, I absolutely have no desire to do so myself, because I'm literally a recovering ketamine addict, so I think avoiding all dissociative substances is probably in my best interests, and there seems to be a lot of parallels between DXM and ketamine, except in regards to the physical euphoria, whereas ketamine can be deeply euphoric from a mental and physical standpoint. But DXM seems to have this heavy body load and almost feels, dull and uncomfortable, a bit rigid and tight, whereas ketamine can have similar properties to that, but almost feel relaxing in a sense. I don't know, everyone's different. I've met many people who've been into DXM and thought it's a fascinating and euphoric substance, find that ketamine and other dissociatives are actually quite uncomfortable and give them a bad time. But anyway, regardless of any subjective differences one might find between the DXM and the ketamine high, both of these substances have very similar pharmacology and probably have similar neurological deficits if abused long term. Ketamine, if abused excessively, and actually in terms of an overdose, can induce this thing called Olney's lesions, also known as NMDA receptor antagonist neurotoxicity, according to Google. They're a specific type of brain damage characterized by neuronal vacuolization, small empty spaces within cells. This brain damage is primarily observed in animal models, particularly rats, exposed to high doses of NMDA receptor antagonists like ketamine, phencyclidine, and dextromethorphan. The lesions are named after John Olney, who first described them in 1989. So really, in essence, whilst I couldn't say that there isn't some profundity to the DXM experience, much like with ketamine, I think perhaps DXM is probably worse for you in the long run, because not only are you consuming it with a cough syrup, how many people choose to consume this substance, think of all the other stuff in the cough syrup as well. Not just the DXM over time that will probably impact your mind and body in quite a negative manner if you're abusing it on the regular, but all the other stuff in the cough syrup. Surely it's not good for your body to consume cough syrup so excessively. I think definitely if you can use it in a sparing manner, it could be used to induce some majorly profound states of consciousness, and if you can reflect on them and integrate them, then that's great. But again, it doesn't just mean that you should make it part of your lifestyle and incorporate it into your daily life and abuse it like how you would abuse alcohol, because I mean you can get a spiritual experience from a psychedelic and it can change your life, but you're not going to do them every single day, are you? That's just the epitome of abuse, and it'll come back and bite you in the arse big time. So DXM is very powerful and can definitely be addictive, and is surely going to be harmful if you're using this long term. Maybe just don't do it. Or if you're going to do it, because there always will be some, try just to do it once every few months, once every 2 months. Don't know. I don't know the actual general overview of what is a safe amount to use and how and the time frame for what is safe, but you've just really got to use any substance like this sparingly. I mean, there's so much we don't know that's going to come out over the years in terms of these NMDA antagonists like dissociatives such as ketamine, PCP and DXM. There's probably even more dark and scary effects that we don't understand going on under the surface. So while I don't invalidate the fact that DXM can induce some exceptionally mystical states of consciousness and that it could radically change your whole perception of reality in a positive way, there is absolutely no excuse to continue using it as a crutch to deal with reality, because this is just misusing the substance and the profundity that it can give you, and you're going to twist this beautiful state of consciousness into something that suits your survival needs, i.e. it's going to be filling the void in your life. Because why do we get addicted to anything? Why did I get addicted to ketamine? Because it was filling a void in my life that I wasn't filling in with my own wisdom and intelligence, and I used a chemical catalyst to just cushion my suffering, and then it became a source of even deeper suffering. So yes, this is oftentimes how life works. You always have to face the truth at some point. You can't keep running away forever. But yep, just be careful with these NMDA receptor antagonists. Whilst they can be used in an antidepressive sense, if you're self-medicating them for your own depression, it's probably gonna have a net negative effect overall. Anyway, just be careful. Also, I hope to see some of you guys hop on for the Tripsitters podcast tonight with Someone That's No One and Tales from the Trip. It's our first episode in 7 months, so it should be a good talk. It'd be great to get Someone That's No One on again. He's one of our very good friends and one of my biggest inspirations by far. I listen to his channel still all the time and have done for a very, very long time. I wouldn't have done this without him, really, and he deserves all the support and love from you guys, because he's one of the forefathers of Trip Report readings on YouTube. And he's just a very insightful, interesting person, and I can't wait to dissect his brain, along with the usual banter that you guys have come to know and love, I guess. But anyway, I'll see you on there later on, and if not, I shall see you on the other side.